Scientology and a rock festival. Mike Goldstein is back to tell more stories about his time on the flagship Apollo, including the musical groups that L. Ron Hubbard was part of. And then we're going to go into the famous rock festival in Madeira, Portugal. Stay tuned. I think you're going to enjoy this. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm here with Janis Gillham Grady. How you doing today, Janis?
I'm good. G'day, everybody. G'day, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, somebody asked in one of our recent videos, in the comments, they asked, how am I doing on my weight loss? And I just weighed myself yesterday. I'm down a total of 76 pounds.
Wow.
You know, since I started 15 months ago, I'm down 76 pounds. And so I'm doing really good. I'm feeling good. You know, just, you know, you go up and you go down a little bit, but it's always the same and all that. But if anybody's interested in, you know, how I did it and all that, we've got this video here that's on our channel. I'll put it in the description, a link to it. And that's how I lost 50 pounds, because I made that video when I was in October, when I'd lost 50 pounds. So I've lost another 26 pounds since then.
Wow.
And
that's really good.
Yeah. And I still want to lose, you know, I'm still, you know, losing more weight. And gosh, I need another 30 pounds before I get to the point where I was when I left the Sea Org. So I've got, you know, I'm going to get there eventually. You know, when I was only 32 in those days, but kind of sucks to get old. The other thing too is, you know, I had surgery on my eye a couple of weeks ago on my left eye. I had a cataract, and so I had surgery done on that, and they removed the cataract and they put in a new artificial lens with my prescription basically on it. So I have 20/20 vision out of my left eye.
Wow.
And now everything is clearer and brighter, like the colors are brighter. And, you know, it's like taking a film off your eye when you get old. That's what a cataract is. And I saw my doctor on Friday, and he said, "You're good. Everything's good." So we're going to do my right eye, and then we'll do that probably in a couple of weeks. And then when I do that, then I'll have perfect 20/20 vision for distance. I won't have to wear glasses, and it'll last me the rest of my life. I'll be 67 in August. So, you know, so it's pretty amazing what they can do with medicine. The only downside is that I have to wear glasses to see computer or to read, because, you know, it doesn't correct your vision up close. But that's okay with me, because I, you know, it's seeing distance and the clearing and the picture, the brightness and the colors. That's what's important to me. So I just need this to see a computer screen and read, which is okay, because I'm old. So
you're old. I'm older than you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm doing great. I'm feeling good, and you know, it's, you know, everybody needs to take care of themselves. That's for sure. And, you know, I've had this ever since I've been in the Sea Org and Scientology. I just deal with it. You know what I mean? If I got a problem, you just deal with it. You don't put it off. You don't ignore it. You just take care of it and handle it. And luckily I'm on Medicare, which basically this is costing me nothing. Medicare has covered it all. So anyway, what were you going to say, Janice?
Well, taking up your point of everyone needs to take care of themselves brings me around to my liquid vitamin. And I actually, over the weekend, had someone say to me, "Yeah, I really like your liquid vitamin, especially when it's cold." And I'm like, well, yeah, when you open it, you're supposed to refrigerate it. Anyway, so a warning to people: once you open it, refrigerate it. And apparently it tastes even better. And that actually helps you get healthier too.
Well, that's like, Janice, drink. I don't like tomato juice, but warm tomato juice out of the can or bottle is not as good as when you put it in the refrigerator and then drink it. It's just the thickness of it and the consistency is just not that good. Yeah. So yeah, the vitamins, definitely you want to keep them in the refrigerator. But anyway, there's a link. You guys can go down and order them if you'd like to get a 30-day supply. It's a liquid vitamin, and we went over that on our previous show. So
right.
Anyway, so why don't you tell everybody who we got here today?
We have Mike Goldstein back, And he's been great. People are really enjoying him. We're getting lots of little emails and messages and comments. He's got a great memory, and I'm enjoying, chatting with him about old times, good and bad. So, let's bring Golds back on.
Okay. Without further ado, here he is, Michael Goldstein. How you doing today, Mike?
Good. I want to congratulate you, Mark, first before we even start, on what I just heard about your weight loss and your eye.
Oh,
and
thanks.
That's fantastic. Well done.
Yeah,
Well,
no, I mean, trust me. And then I had to have a heart procedure about 2 months ago too. They put a stent in one of my arteries. I had no idea, but I listened to my body, went to the hospital, got tested, and then they went, well, let's go in, and they put a catheter in and dye, and then they found I had a 99.9% blocked widowmaker artery. And I go, oh, okay, well, what are we going to do? And it's already handled. We put a stent in there and you'll be okay. And so what about my other arteries? Oh, they're all great. So I'm like, okay, good. You got to pay attention to these things. But I'm feeling great. I'm losing weight. And, I'm going to be around a long time.
Good. Wonderful.
Yeah, we got many more shows we have to cover. So, better not go anywhere.
Anyway, so I agree. Mike's a great storyteller. We've gotten lots of great comments and all that. And we're going to pick up where we left off the last time. We've got a really interesting stories to tell today, right, Janis and Mike?
Yes, we do.
Great. Well, where we left off last, we were talking about the Apollo Troupe, right? Which was the musical group that got set up on the Apollo to basically handle PR, public relations at the different ports, right?
Right.
That's how you got out. And that's how you got out of the RPF. That was the other thing too.
Along with Norman and Owen and other people, Yeah. And so, like I mentioned, I ended up in the Tashura group, backing up Tashura on the drums, and Russ Meadows came in from the Stars, and that's Tashura. And he played bass, and then we had Owen Starkey on clarinet, and another guy. I think his name was Steve. Now that I just remembered, the piano player, the guy from Washington, from Seattle. It was had a cold. I think his name was. I think that's the name of his. Anyway, and that was the band around Ashura, and it was actually in many ways it was a lot of fun. Okay, I kind of enjoyed it in some ways, In some ways, I had to bite my tongue. When LRH would talk about recording and stuff, and some of the groups that he would talk about something. I remember him talking to the Stars once when I was there, and he's talking about how the Rolling Stones didn't sound really good, and I was just biting my tongue, going, "What?" I just if you could sound anywhere close to that, But in other areas, he was pretty good. One of the things it was. For Russell Meadows, he came down from the Stars, and he didn't really want to be there. And Owen and I had just come from the RPF, and this other guy was a student from out of town, so nobody really wanted to be in that group, but we did it, And one of the things I thought was pretty good that LRH did was he wanted us to play music that was not Mideastern, but he wanted us to do it in that sort of a style from Tashura. So we would do songs like Stevie Wonder. I didn't like the songs we did very much, but we had to learn them in this style so it would sound Mideastern. And what he had us do, which I thought was pretty clever, was he had us listen to these obscure groups like Egyptian groups and things like this, and Tashura would pick out a song, and we had to play the song with the instrument we had. In other words, I had to duplicate the percussion sounds with what I had, and the same thing with each of the musicians. And it was very interesting. I thought that was really a good exercise. And we actually played some really weird Egyptian songs, and I still remember them. The names that we all had to sing them. But there were some things that were a lot of fun about the whole thing, about the troupe.
Right.
So,
and did you know Hubbard actually got a subscription to the top 100 Billboard songs, and the records would come in, and as messengers, of course, we would put them on behind his desk. he had a stereo system, and we'd put on the different records of the top 100 and just rotate those through. And we'd dance behind his desk while he was working away. But it got us to know what the top 100 songs were. And from him listening to those, he'd then give advice to the different groups, music groups.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It was actually, in some ways it was fun. We played at a lot of really interesting gigs in Portugal and Spain. Remember some of the places we went that were so interesting. The weirdest dinner I ever had, we played someplace and we had a dinner of, I think it was in Spain, probably in the Canary Islands. But we had rabbit was the main meal. And then after the rabbit, baked Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine? What a combination. But it was actually kind of interesting in many ways. And like I said, we did it. I still felt like we were in the RPF, to be honest with you, that we were just kind of on loan or something.
Oh, really? But you didn't get fired to study?
No, what? No, we did everything. Yeah. No. We were as good as out of it, but it just still felt kind of like that. I can't explain it, but.
Janice, why don't we run through the photos? Why don't we show the picture of the stars and in LRH and just point out who these people are, and then we can carry on with the stories. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll start with the top left. That's Russ Meadows, who Gold's already just mentioned. And next to him is Luton Taylor. Luton was trombone. And Mike, didn't you mention Luton used to play with someone famous before he joined the Sea Org?
Yeah. He did. I think he played with Count Basie for a while.
Okay.
I think he did.
And I'd heard years ago that he'd passed away, but then I found out from Neil, who's there in the front left, the lower left.
Neil Sephardi. Neil
Sephardi. But I found out from Neil, apparently Luton's still alive. And so that was good news to hear. He's just not in Scientology.
I think his wife, Alethea, is still alive too, Neil said.
Yeah, I actually, interesting you bring up Alethea, because many years ago, probably nearly 20 years ago, because it was my 50th birthday party, Alethea had been in touch with me and I invited her to come to Vegas for my birthday party, and she was trying to get news on everybody. And someone kept saying, Alethea is a plant. She's spying. She's trying to gather information to give it to the church. And I personally just didn't care. I always liked Alethea. She used to be Hubbard's secretary and transcribed all his lectures. And then I find out from Lois Riesdorf several years later that Alethea was back on lines at Advanced Organization in Los Angeles. So that just kind of confirmed, yep, she was a plant at the birthday party reporting everyone who was there. But she was a sweetheart anyway, whether she was reporting on us or not. Yeah, anyway, so that was Luton's wife.
Right.
Yeah, and then Neil
had a little kid too. Yeah. Then they have a little, we all had kids at the base that were all about the same age.
Yeah.
Yes, and they did. And Alethea had mentioned, I think he was a bus driver in Los Angeles. And this was like nearly 20 years ago. I have no idea what he's doing now.
He'd be almost 50. My daughter's going to be 50 in December. So all those kids, including Diana's daughter.
Yeah, Roanne.
Roanne, yeah. Yeah, they're all up there now. It's been that long.
All about the same age. They were all about 2 years old at that time down in Clearwater, which was like 78 or something.
Yeah, Roanne was born in 78.
Okay.
Janis, tell people about Neil Sephardi, because we're still friends with him. We see him. He goes on cruises with us. He was just at the Mike Rinder Remembrance event.
Yeah. Well, Neil lives down in Florida, and he's a sax player. And he then later got into the restaurant business and became a chef and ran a whole kitchen for Sony. He's done very well. And I've seen him on and off. He's remarried, of course, a lovely wife. But I saw him last year at Kerry Gleason's Celebration of Life, and then this year at Mike Rinder's Celebration of Life. And he's still kicking. He's doing really well. And he's actually said he'll come on our show. We just have to get him scheduled in. But
That's right.
he joined the Sea Org in the early 70s. No, maybe the late 60s. And he actually, Mike, he was working with Captain Bill at AOLA when Captain Bill was chasing Sykes and Martians around Los Angeles. And Neil's got some good stories about that.
That had to be like 69.
Yeah,
Because
69.
I joined 71 and he was on the boulevard with Mo when I joined the Sea Org. It's one of the first people. Yeah.
Yeah. Neil's a big personality. He's got great stories. He's a big personality. I think, Janis, isn't he the one that he thinks that the Jokers and Degraders was written about him or something?
Yeah. And that wouldn't surprise me, but I know there was also a Joker and Degrader situation at Celebrity Center because my mom got assigned liability for it by the Guardian's office after Hubbard had them investigate where the joke came from, and it came from Celebrity Center. So my mom got in trouble, though she wasn't part of it, but she was the commanding officer. So anyway, Neil is bigger than life personality. And then next to him in the middle there is Hubbard, L. Ron Hubbard. And then the next one to the right, that's Tom Rodriguez. Tom was from Puerto Rico.
Is that the black cat? With the black cap?
Yes. Yeah, he was from Puerto Rico and he played bongos. So when they were putting the group together, he's like, oh, I play bongos. So he plays bongos. Next to him is Charlie Rush. Charlie was the drummer of the Apollo Stars. And Charlie had married, while he was a drummer for the Apollo Stars, he married Annie Tidman, who became Annie Broker later on. And Charlie was always fun, always very lighthearted and fun. And he has passed away. He remained in the Sea Org up until he passed away, I guess, a year or two ago. But he was in the Sea Org, even though he got busted from being a musician and was a pot washer in Los Angeles for years. He stuck it out and went through his cancer treatment and just stuck the whole thing out till he passed away. And then Tamia Arbuckle. Tamia was the bass player. And I believe he is still in the Sea Org now. I know his wife, Mary, passed away. And I don't know what happened to his son. But I believe if he's alive, he's still in the Sea Org. And then the next one with the long hair and the mustache, that's Craig Ferreira. I've talked about his brother, Mark Ferreira, or also known as Muff, in other stories, where Muff we figured he was doing amends to get back online so that he could communicate with Craig when he showed up and was a plant at Kimma Douglas's celebration of life. Anyway, so Craig is in good standing, apparently, as a Scientologist in the Los Angeles area. And then hidden in the back is Wayne Marple, who was a trumpet player. And Wayne had passed away many years ago, but had been an executive on the ship and in Los Angeles. He helped with the renovations on the Blue Building, the complex. And then next, at the very end on the right, on the flute, is Kenny Kampleman.
Kenny Kampleman. Yeah.
And Kenny was in security for many, many years at the Fort Harrison after we left the ship. And I believe he is actually still in the Sea Org. I haven't heard it otherwise.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't even know some of those people had passed.
Yeah.
Just talking about.
Well, and then, of course, Annie Rush, she passed away too. Gosh, what, 10, 15 years ago, Janis? Same thing?
2012, yeah.
Yeah. Still in the Sea Org, had cancer, pushed off to the side, and not celebrated in any way, shape, or form with Hubbard all the way until the day he died,
And then her family wasn't even told. I'm the one who broke the news to her sisters. They had no idea. So, yeah, sad scene on some of these.
Yeah.
But we're healthy and we're here.
We're healthy and we're here and we keep it on. Keep on going. That's it.
Exactly.
And we remember them.
Yeah. Yep, we remember them. Yeah.
Even if others don't, we'll remember them. Good. So that was the troop, and we were still in Madeira at the time that Rebecca and I were going to go on leave, because, well, actually everybody in the troop was ordered on leave at the same time. Okay. And since I was in the troop, I had to go on leave, except the problem is that Rebecca couldn't get off post. She was, of course, on a post that was so valuable she couldn't leave. So at that time, I'm not going on leave without her, and I'm not going to waste my leave. So I remember who was somebody in the troop, the guy who was running the troop, some guy by the name of Laurie Fitzpatrick. Do you remember that guy? Do you remember the name? Okay,
yeah, Laurie Fitzpatrick. I thought he ended up in SO1.
Well, I don't know, but he was in the troop at that time. He was like he was like kind of over us or something. I don't remember, but he's, no, you can't go. And I go, you have to go. And I go, I'm not going. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I says, well, I'll find something to do. So Bill Robertson was back on the ship by now, and so I went to Bill and I asked him, what is there something I can do for you, because I don't want to go on leave. He says, why don't you be my yeoman? I go, okay, So I was just being Captain Bill's yeoman, doing so because I'm not leaving. And a messenger came down to him, saying, asking him something about something else. And he saw me sitting in the office. Go, what are you doing here? The messenger. And I told the messenger, who I don't remember who it was, but I told her, and she went back and she came back with a message from LRH saying, you're going on leave, and Rebecca's going on leave. I'm ordering her, she's going, so you guys can both go together. I go, okay, great. So we were supposed to leave the next morning. All right. We were all set to leave. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's set the stage. So just so people who don't know this, Madeira, where is that? That's an island, obviously, right? But where is it for people?
Portugal. And it's part of, it belongs to Portugal. It's part of and so, yeah, that's where we were at that time. We used to go quite a bit. Sorry.
It's actually further south and closer to Africa, the northwest coast of Africa, because we used to go down to Agadir to go out to Madeira, because it was less of a distance than coming down from Portugal. But when you were there, we didn't go to
It's a
Portuguese island.
Yeah.
It's a
right.
Portuguese
But when you were there, Mike, when you were there, we didn't go to Morocco anymore. So
not when I came back.
That's why you would have come from Lisbon.
Right.
Yeah. And Funchal is the main town or on the island. Is that it? Funchal?
Yes. That's down there at the south.
Yeah. That's where we would go. Funchal.
Okay.
Quite a bit. Remember that.
And
okay.
Anyway, that was yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted, since we're talking about it, this is the harbor of Funchal. And you can see, you look at the dock there, you can see passenger liners, and out at anchor more passenger liners, and you see that circle or the oval shape, that is the Apollo. And that kind of shows you the size we were in comparison to these other passenger liners. And these guys, when they would come to Madeira, they would just put themselves on autopilot and probably have only one person on the bridge and just barrel their way through the waters to get there. And we'd be putting along and seeing them coming straight at us. We'd have to try and go as fast as we could to get out of their way, because there was no one watching.
Where was it? Where was the dock that went way, way out into the ocean? Do you know what I'm talking about? It was like a long pier that went out.
Tangier.
Was that Tangier where that long, long dock was? I remember being all the way out way out on that thing with the ship, and where you could go. We would go swimming, but it was the water super deep. That was not. Okay, good. I just wanted to remember.
That would have been Tangier in Morocco.
Tangier. Okay, right. Okay. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to kind of orient people as to the size of our ship and everything in Madeira.
It was tiny compared to those other ships, for sure. So we were supposed to leave the next morning, and you understand most of the troop was already off on leave. So we were going to go the next day, and then that night was the rock festival. And what the rock festival was, for a lot of people that don't know, it was people came to the ship and they stoned the ship with rocks. A lot of
locals.
And it happened very quickly. We didn't even know it was happening, but it happened very quick. And there were soldiers there on the dock almost at the same time with guns that were kind of supposedly keeping the people from coming aboard the ship. And
is this the dock? Is this the dock here, Janis? That jetty?
Yeah, that's the dock there. And we were docked at that time. You see in the middle of that dock, there's kind of a little castle. Mm-hmm. And we were docked just to the left of that. And if you look at the bottom right, you'll see like a seawall or a castle wall type thing. That right there where the tree line is, there's a little tower, but there's a tree line there. That's where customs was. And so you go through there and then turn left down and go down the dock. So as Mike was saying, rocks were thrown at us by the locals. So taxis loaded with rocks were coming through, and customs was letting them through, and they were coming down to where that big white ship is, that's where we were docked, and they were throwing rocks at us.
Right. Well, the first thing they did was they dumped all the motorcycles and the little car we had into the ocean, and then the rocks started, and it was very quick, and some people got hurt, jaws broken, that sort of thing. And since I was the yeoman at that time, I was in charge of repelling boarders. If anybody would come on board the ship, I had to lead a crew of guys on the well deck to repel boarders, which sounds kind of funny, but it was, you didn't know.
And how did you repel them?
Well, I went to the bosun's locker and got the scrapers. The metal scrapers that we scraped the deck with, and armed people with those. And then they went down to the well deck. And then I was, we were waiting. We didn't want anybody to come aboard for sure. And one of the things we were doing was using the hoses on them. And most of the soldiers were just laughing when we did that. And I believe we had weapons on board, but it would have been crazy to do anything like that because they would have fired on the ship. So we were using the water instead. And then if they came aboard, then we would repel them. So the first thing I actually did was make sure Rebecca was safe down in the tween deck somewhere. And then I was kind of going up forward and reporting to Bill and then coming back down. And I remember I was jumping through hatches because you don't want to go on over the ship. You get hit by a rock, so you go underneath and then come up. And I was going through, just jumping through hatches one after the other. And I stepped through one, and my foot totally turned the opposite direction. Ooh. To the point of where I was standing, but I almost passed out. It was so bad. And I'm standing there. The only thing I could think to do was a contact assist. So I'm sitting there trying to do a contact assist on this foot that, I'm talking completely turned around. And then all of a sudden, LRH is over there coming on the other side. And I think that was the last time I saw him, was right there. And we just kind of, he was going that way and I'm going this way. And we just kind of nodded to each other in acknowledgement. And then I just took off, And a lot of it was the adrenaline. There was a lot of adrenaline. So I ran on that foot for the rest of the night. Fortunately, they didn't come aboard. And finally, we were able to get out to anchor, which was that was the hardest part, to get off from the dock. And once we got out to anchor, then we're just figuring, how do we get out of the port and how do we get away from here? But at least we're free from that. And at that point, I went down and got Rebecca, and we came up, and then my foot started hurting. And I went to the MO, and they had to cut my boot off. It was so swollen, and it was all really bad. I couldn't walk at that point. I was unable to walk on it. But I'm going, there's no way I'm staying here. There's just no way I'm staying on this nut house. Because I mean, a lot of people, there are a lot of stories about why, you know, a lot of it was, because they knew LRH was on the ship and they were doing it. I don't believe none of that. I'm almost certain why they stoned the ship, why it happened. Because while that was happening, these people that were throwing the rocks, they were all chanting, CIA, CIA. And LRH is on a boomhorn screaming, Comunista. You know, you know, and I remember what pissed him off was he looks over the side and there's Pat Broker in a boat, right? He's going, will you tell that idiot to get back on the ship? He's going to get himself killed. In a Pat, I probably thought it was like another Dirty Harry, you know, or what was it? Dirty Dozen movie or something. He was always, so anyway, so they were all screaming CIA. And to me at that moment, it was totally logical. Here you got a bunch of, you know, I mean, what would have been happening is we were supposedly doing all this great PR work, but LRH was still doing those missions on shore, trying to infiltrate. And I'm positive they found out and they knew. And then you're looking at this, and you got all these Americans on board. Who would they think we are? They'd think we were the CIA, of course. So
right.
that I'm sure that was why they thought we were the CIA.
Well, we did have a shore unit at that time with Jinton Kelsey, Liz Gablehouse, Janet
Mike
Thompson, Mike Rinder. We had, and someone else, but we had a shore unit and they were there doing surveys.
Right.
Yeah.
Of the locals. And I'm kind of like, why are we surveying people in Madeira? They're not even on the mainland. So anyway, so we did have this unit doing surveys. And and I remember I used to go play basketball at the local gym. And I remember that morning I was on Liberty and I played basketball. And as I was leaving, there was this group of people, of men gathering outside the gym. And I kept hearing the name Apollo. And I was like, I wonder what they're talking about. You know, are they really referring to the Apollo or something else? I had no clue. Anyway, I go back to I clean up and off I go on my Liberty and in town. And then that night, because when we were on Libs. We didn't usually go back to the ship. You just stayed out in the town the whole day and, you know, went to the movies, went to dinner, you know, sightseeing, whatever. Anyway, so that night we're on our way back to the ship and some people were there at customs and said, rocks are being thrown at us. You need to go up to the hotel and stay there. Have you seen Mary Sue? And I'm like, well, Mary Sue is in town. So they were waiting for Mary Sue and Nikki and Diana to come to send them up to the Sheraton Hotel. So instead of us going back to the ship and trying to make our way through the rock throwers. Meanwhile, Wendell and Ellen Reynolds were on Liberty, and some of the locals recognized them and started chasing them until they jumped in a taxi to get away from the mad crowd chasing them around Funchal. But the gathering place, we spread word and the gathering place was go up to the Sheraton. The rocks are being thrown at the ship by the locals and how taxi loads had come in. And we'd even heard about them throwing the bikes in the harbor and Mary Sue's mini miner, which the shore unit had been borrowing. Anyway, so we stayed up there and we had to act as if nothing was happening. And we could look down and we could see the ship, we could see the view of the harbor and everything, but we couldn't see the activity. But we were up there at the nightclub dancing away and having to act as if nothing is happening. You know, our home is safe. Right. And we'd keep going over to the window and just kind of, oh, look at that beautiful view out there of the sun setting, you know. And then it was finally, I guess it was around 2 a.m. in the morning when after the ship, you guys were there with the water hoses, blowing people off the gangway and pushing people off, trying to climb aboard. And a rock going, Hubbard was up there, as you said, and Kimmer was next to him. And a rock actually hit her in the jaw and broke her jaw. My sister was next to her at the time. And then there was people, they were actually pulling the ship lines off the bulwarks on the dock to let the ship just kind of coast out on its own. So that's when Hubbard gets, start up the engines. We got to get off away from the dock and go out to anchor. So the ship would have pulled out and gone out to anchor, like kind of in this picture here, out in that location. And then we would have had a launch, a boat going back and forth, one of the sea sleds taking people back and forth. So at 2 a.m, we'd go down in small groups and get on the launch and go on out to the ship to get off the island. And we did that until everyone was cleared from the hotel and we were back aboard. So Mike, back over to you.
Okay, well that pretty much described the night, you know, and we were on the ship at that time. You guys are trying to get back on. And so anyway, I decided I'm going on leave. We're not staying here. We're not going on this cruise. Rebecca says, you can't walk. How can you go? You know, I got a pair of these crutches, the polio-like crutches, the European ones like that. And so I was able to go up and down the the stairs. And I said, I can go like this. Let's just go. So the next morning, there was a launch going back to shore to take the wounded crew members to a hospital because there's no way they were going to be able to go on a long cruise. You know, like Kima, they had to go to the hospital. So they were sending the launch. That was like the last launch. And so he said, I'm going on that. And also Charlie Rush and Annie hadn't left. So the 4 of us all got on that launch to go to shore because we were going to all take leave, our leave at the same time. So I remember getting off, you know, this is like the next morning. And we're walking down the dock and there's all these people that had been there the night before. And it was like walking through a wild pack of baboons that are just waiting to pounce, but they don't, you know. So we're walking and they're just kind of looking, you know, just waiting, and I'm on crutches, you know. And so we make it down to a taxi, and then we take a taxi to the airport, and we just figured the main thing is we just got to get out of Portugal. We just got to get out of here. And it was pretty hairy. So we get to the airport. And we have a while to wait because we're catching a plane to go to Lisbon, and then from Lisbon we're going to go to New York. And so we're at the airport, and we're there for a while. And it's getting to be about the time when they're going to start boarding, right? So I say to Rebecca, okay, give me your, you know, we need the passports. We got our passport, and I took the passports and the money and put it in her purse, and she had this big leather purse with a metal thing on it. So I look around and go, where's your purse? She goes, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Where's your purse? I don't know. So we're looking around, we're going crazy. The only thing she can figure is she left it in the cab. So she left it in a cab, and all the cabs look exactly the same. They're all these black and green things that look like they're from the 1950s. And there's tons of cabs on the island. How are we going to do this? So of course, Charlie and Annie just go get going. You know, you guys go get on the plane. What are you guys going to do? I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do because you know, what's the solution? The only thing we could do is go back to the ship. You know, I don't want to go back to the ship. So, and this really happened. This is going to sound very weird, but it happened. And I'm standing there just freaking out. And all of a sudden, there's this Portuguese guy right in my face. Can I help you? You know, can I help you? And I go, do you have a car? And he goes, yes. And I go, good, let's go. Rebecca goes, where are we going? I don't know. We got to find your purse. So we go outside. And not only does this guy have a car, he's got a gold Mercedes. A gold Mercedes. So I don't know who he is, where we're going. I don't even think. I'm not thinking, you got to understand. We just get in the back of the cab and I just go drive. And we just start driving. And I notice as we're driving out of the airport, I look up to my right and a ways away down, there's a road and there's a little cab stand. In other words, a bunch, just a dirt area and maybe 4 or 5 cabs parked there. And I just go there. So we drive off, and we go down to this little cab area. I get out of the cab. I'm in. I walk up to the one cab. There's a guy sleeping over the steering wheel. I bang on the window. He sits up and I say in English, give me the purse. He looks at me. He reaches behind. He takes the purse and hands it to me. I take the purse. I get into the car and Rebecca goes, how did you do that? I go, I don't know.
Tone 40. That was tone 40.
I don't know what it was. I just said, let's just go. So I go back. And so you understand, they were boarding already. So we get back to the airport and I get out of the cab. I don't even look at this guy. We just get out and we go for the plane. I don't know who that character was. I don't know where he came from. It was people tell me, gold Mercedes, there's no such, that's what happened. So we make it on the plane just before it's going to take off. So we get on the plane. We're Charlie and Annie are somewhere in the back. We're kind of in front. We sit down. And as we sit down, these 3 young Portuguese guys get on the plane. Young guys. They look at us as they're passing, and I just have a feeling that they're from that crowd. They followed us. I just have a feeling these guys are not good guys, just the way they looked at us. So we get the plane, we get to Lisbon. And now we got to figure out how do we get out of Lisbon and get to New York, because we got to get tickets somehow. And so Charlie, I can't walk. So Charlie says, I'll go get him. You stay with the girls. So he goes to get the tickets, and we have all our luggage, and I'm sitting there with the girls. And when he leaves, the 3 guys come in from 3 different directions on us. And I by this time I'm so angry. I pick up one of the crutches and I go, come on, let's go. These 3 guys. And they finally just back off and walk away. And I don't know where they went, whatever happened, because I didn't see them again. Then Charlie got back, and he said, we can't leave. We got to come back tomorrow morning. We're flying standby. We got to come back tomorrow morning. So we got to go find a hotel. So then we go off and search for a hotel. And I don't know what was going on in Lisbon, but there was other stuff that was happening. There was like fires going on. It was like something really heavy was going on.
Can I interrupt here and bring that up? Yeah, because when we were in Lisbon, right before we went to Madeira, there was an overthrow of the government.
That's
and what had actually happened is there was tanks rolling into town and the soldiers marching in with carnations attached to their rifles, and there was hammer and sickles being painted on different beautiful statues. I mean, it was like a full-blown takeover by the communists. And that's why we had left Lisbon, was because this was going on. So you're flying back into Lisbon during the time of the riots and everything.
It was heavy, because we remember going to the airport and there's fires and everything. We're going, let's just get a hotel and hide away till tomorrow morning. We just wanted to get out of
And people need to realize, Golds, when you're talking about this, there was no computers, there was no internet, there were no cell phones. So and you buy a ticket going up to the counter and you pay cash for your ticket. And you didn't pre-book or anything like that. So it was a very different way of life that you're having to deal with. And so I want people to recognize that, where you can't just, let me look up a hotel on my phone.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that.
No, you had to go there and pay cash. You're absolutely right. And this was not, we just realized that this is a place we got to get out of very quickly. We thought we were fortunate to get out of Madeira, but now Lisbon, this is just as bad. So we got to get out of here. So we hid out in some little hotel.
And no credit cards.
No credit cards. Maybe there were, but I have a credit card. So we get into this hotel, and then I go upstairs into the room, and I go in and I take my sock off, because all I had on that one foot was a sock. And I took it off, and my foot was like purple and red. It looked so bad. And it was, you couldn't even see my ankle. It was that swollen. And I tried to soak it and, get some of the, So the next morning we make it back to the airport, and we're standby, and they get us on a plane, and we're flying first class. I don't know how, but there was the only seat. So the four of us got on first class going back to New York. And it was like, that was one of the greatest reliefs. And we were drinking champagne and eating lobster and flying back on standby to New York. And that was great. And then we got to New York, and then Charlie and Annie went their way, and Rebecca's father picked us up at the airport, and we went to her house in Connecticut, her family house in Connecticut. And by the time we got to Connecticut, the drive, everything, I get out of the car and I can walk. And I get inside, I take off my sock, and my foot is normal except for one little area that was a little bit red.
Wow.
And that's how we got back to the States.
I want to explain when I said for our viewers who are never in Scientology, when I said tone 40, I think Mike knows what I'm talking about.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It's a thing in Scientology. Tone 40 is intention without reservation. So when you went up to that cab driver and said, "Give me that purse," that's in Scientology we call that tone 40. So that's what I was bringing.
It was something weirder than tone 40, because I don't know how I knew or what I said, or it was bizarre. It was a really bizarre experience.
Wow.
Really bizarre.
That was the last time you saw the Apollo, right? And also the last time you saw Hubbard.
That was the last time, because then we went back to the States, and the ship left. And then where did they go? You tell them where they went from there.
Yeah, well, after you left, we ended up having to go back into the dock to get fuel and water. We'd already done a stores party of all the food being loaded onto the launch and sent out to the ship, and a big stores party of moving the food all into storage so we could take a long journey. And then we went in and got the fuel and water, and we were under guard. No one was allowed on the dock at all. Well, with the military standing guard of us to make sure we're okay. But we did notice that the agitator from the night before was on the dock talking to some of the armed guards. Anyway, so that was there for our safety. And no one was allowed off the ship except port captain's office. And that's a whole nother story that I'll address at a different time on what happened with the port captain's office guys. And anyway, we then set sail, and we said that we were sailing south. We were going to go back to Africa. And so we started sailing down to Africa. And I'm sure the shore had more sophisticated equipment than we had. And we went a little bit south, and then we turned and went west, and we headed out to Bermuda. And we did 9 days sailing to Bermuda. Across the Atlantic. And I'll tell you, I've sailed the Atlantic before, but this time it was smooth. It was so smooth. It was amazing. It was like looking down on glass or mirror. And this little boat just sailed across without, the rocking and rolling just wasn't there. It was one of the smoothest trips we'd ever done. And then we got to Bermuda, and there's our bucket of rust, our rust bucket.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get to Bermuda, and somehow they knew we were coming. And then when we sailed from Bermuda, we were going to go to Charleston and come into the U.S.
South Carolina.
Charleston, South Carolina. And so we sailed down from Bermuda, and we just crossed out of international waters into U.S. waters. And we're sailing towards Charleston when Jane Kemba gets on the radio, and she's in England, and she's calling the ship through radio. And I'm on the bridge with Hubbard, and he's told Jane Kemba is on the radio. And it's like, what's Jane Kemba doing on the radio? This is the guardian of Worldwide. She's over all intelligence and legal of the Guardian's office. So Hubbard and I go down to the radio room, and he gets on the radio with Jane. And Jane is like, there are feds and IRS agents and DEA, the drug enforcement, on the dock waiting to board the ship as soon as you arrive in Charleston. Now, apparently she had been told this through someone spilled the beans to the assistant guardian in Hawaii. And they contacted Jane, and Jane called the ship. And so though we were in international waters and the Coast Guard was coming out towards us to stop us and bring us in, we quickly, after that radio call, Hubbard flew back up to that bridge and gave him spin the helm and turn the ship around and get back in international waters as fast as possible. And that's what we did. And there they were apparently on the dock. And we were like, okay, were they going to plant drugs on the ship as an excuse to come aboard? And the IRS was there wanting to arrest Hubbard. And, when you're in that circle, your mind is to protect Hubbard. You don't know of what the crimes are and has he really committed a crime, or is this just stuff that's made up? You don't know. You only find that out later on when the FBI raids the Guardian's office in 1977. So we turn around, get back into international waters, and it's like, okay, pull out the charts. Where are we going to go now? So he's in the chart room looking at charts, and okay, Bahamas, here we come. And we sail on down to Freeport in the Bahamas.
Oh, God. Wow.
Yeah, but we had no plan except get in international waters and then figure out where are we going.
Yeah, just take care of that and then figure out the next thing when you have to do it. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's crazy. So, from a rock festival in Madeira to being chased to, across the Atlantic and then, down to the Bahamas because you can't get into the U.S. Wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mike, what did you and Rebecca do after you got to Connecticut? Did you stay on leave or what did you do?
Well, we had the 3-week leave, so we visited her family in Connecticut, and then we went to visit my family in Denver. And then when we got to Denver, I find out my father's business is going down. He's having a lot of problems. So we took a 6-month leave of absence to help my father with his business. And then that's what we did. We went in and we worked at his company doing that. And it gave me a chance to really, one of the things that was under me and LRH Properties Chief was this idea, WISE, that had to do with getting the administrative technology out there, And I think the guy that was under me doing it was Franny's Fred Harris. I think he was doing some of that. Yeah, I think so. And so I thought, I never was that excited about it on the ship because you had to be able to go out and do it within, with a real company, not it just didn't apply, in other words. So that's what I thought would be really fun because I could work with my dad and help him with his business, but I could also try putting what I learned into a real business, which was really interesting.
How did you get your leave? Like you obviously had to request it. I mean, you didn't know where the ship was. So did you send something to the relay office in New York or something?
I don't remember. I don't remember, but I'm sure we did. We just
you got approved.
There were ways to get. We got an okay because we did it. We had 3 weeks and we ended up doing it. We had a week left or something, and then I CSW up lines to see. We want to take it 6 months LOA, and they said okay. So that's what we did.
Mark, to answer that, you would have written something and sent it to the relay office in New York to Roney. Mm-hmm. And then they would have forwarded it to the ship, and you probably petitioned Hubbard for the 6 months.
I think it was Mary Sue.
Mary Sue, okay. And
actually, now that you remind me. Yeah, that's what it was.
So it would have come to the ship through the relay unit, the regular communication lines. That's what you would use.
Yeah.
And then, Janis, how would Charlie and Annie Rush get back to the ship because they don't know where the heck it is after going on their leave?
Well, when you go on leave, you then contact a relay office, and they're the ones who then send you to New York. And then from New York, Roney knows where the ship is, and they deal with that. It's just like when I finished a mission in Washington, D.C., and where to go back to the ship. And so we go from Washington and we go to New York, and then the relay office then sends us down to Puerto Rico as a stopping point to go to Trinidad. But it's the relay office. And when we got to Puerto Rico, it happened to be Foster and Alan Buchanan and I. And when we got to Puerto Rico, they wouldn't let me through to Trinidad because I had an Australian passport. And I'm like, why is this? And then Foster is telexing the ship directly, and the ship then gets the local office in Trinidad to tell Puerto Rico to let me through. And so we're back at the airport, having had to spend the night in Puerto Rico with no money. But they then come out and say, okay, let her through. Trinidad saying let her through. And meanwhile, the guy comes out and says, oh, I'm sorry, you can get on this plane. It's 5 minutes away from leaving. He says, it's South Africans that can't go to Trinidad.
Not Australians.
Not Australians. So then I got VIP treatment all the way to the ship going through Trinidad. They picked me up and got me to the ship and apologized and that type of thing. But that's how it works. It's the relay office in New York that knows where to send you and where the ship's going to be.
Now, we've never talked about where was the relay office? Was it in New York City and who was there? I mean, was it obviously
Queens.
It handled like logistics, it handled like packages and mail and everything?
Yeah, it was in Queens. And there was different people there. Foster Tompkins was there a lot. Just various different people. They kind of tried to rotate them. Like when we were in Europe, Mike Douglas and Ellen Reynolds were in Madrid being the relay office, and David Rapp. And then when we moved from Spain and moved it down to Lisbon, it was Bella and Chuck Adams and Brian Charlton and a guy called Mike Simpson. So it changed so that people had a chance to come back to the ship, or they'd come visit and get auditing and study and then go back. But the idea is kind of to rotate them so that someone's not left out there on their own.
Right. And they would handle all the mail packs, right? Because this is, again, before the internet or anything else. Everything came by dispatch and mail. So they would send the packs, right. On airplanes and get it.
Yeah. So like Mike would have probably written his petition to go to LRH, and it would have gone to the relay, the FOLO, the flag liaison office in New York, who would then have sent it over to the relay office, New York, Roni, who would then put it with all the mail packs and send it to the ship.
Got it.
You're right. I did petition LRH. It was Mary Sue about something else afterwards. I got it mixed up. I did petition Mary Sue about something else after that. But you're right. It was LRH.
Right.
That's absolutely right. It was him. Yeah, because I remember writing up even some of the stuff about the Y stuff to him when I wrote it up. Yeah.
Yeah. See,
okay.
Usually when someone wanted an extended leave of absence, it usually always went to Hubbard, and he always approved them.
Yeah.
That's
well,
right.
we're just over an hour right now. Is this a good point to end this episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then we'll pick up Mike's new life after the ship.
Yeah, because trust me, viewers, there's more to come. Okay, it's not just Mike leaving the Apollo. He's got a lot more to tell, and a lot more after he left Scientology. So we've got more to go with our friend Mike Goldstein.
Yes.
Anyway, we want to thank everybody for watching the show, and please subscribe and hit that like button. As Janis likes to say, rock slam the like button, hit the notification button so you know when the next video comes up. We really appreciate all the questions and comments that people are writing, and we do read them, and we answer them as best we can. But please, let us know how we're doing. Let us know if you're enjoying the show, if you have any questions or anything like that. And we really appreciate that. And if you want to support us, you can buy us a coffee. Link in the description, as always. That helps support the channel and keep us rolling here. And then, of course, you can get Janis's multi-liquid vitamins. There's a link right there that you can click on, and you can order it, and peach flavored. And anyway, it's got everything there. So, if you would like to order that, you can go ahead and do that too. Janis and Mike, have you guys got anything else you would like to say before we end the show?
Thank you.
Okay, as usual, Mike, it's good chatting with you.
Good talking to you guys. Thanks again. Really. It's great.
Okay.
Okay.
Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.